Okay, so now that we've laid out Dennett's two arguments, we'll look at planning as replies. These are from chapter 3, just following along in the handout, and you can see the page references. Okay, so to the Superman argument, which premise will planning deny? So, as you guys all know, you either attack the validity or whether the conclusion follows from the premises. Uh, you either attack that or you attack the truth of the premises. And in this case, I take planning to be attacking premise 1. Okay? Premise 1 said, the belief that Superman guided evolution is analogous to the belief that God guided evolution. Okay? Now, planning denies premise 1. I actually thought this was kind of funny um, because, well, I'll read what he says. For one thing, human-like creatures like Superman, this is in the middle of page 41, uh, don't live really long enough. Very few achieve an age of 500 million years. In fact, Superman was brought up in the 1930s in Kansas, and by now would be scarcely more than 80 years old. Um, okay, so what's planning denying? Well, I guess belief that Superman guided evolution he thinks is a little more ridiculous because according to official DC canon, Superman was raised in Kansas in the United States well after evolution already happened. So Superman couldn't have done that. So he couldn't have guided evolution. Okay, so now that seems to be right, but it doesn't. I don't know. Does it really get to the core of the issue? Um, well, they're going to continue talking about Supermanism, but yeah, I guess he attacks premise 1. He seems to agree with premise 2, the belief that Superman guided evolution is unreasonable. I think what we'll want to see from Dennett in the next chapters is, well, maybe there's other stories not quite like Superman, but similar, where we can make an argument like this to work. But that's to be thought of. So think about that for yourself. Could we make an argument like Dennett's Superman argument to work where planning can't make his easy reply? Okay, the next argument is Dennett's assumption of the assumption of naturalism argument. Um, let's see. So how does that go? Um, so again, what planning denies is premise 1. Premise 1 stated that naturalism is assumed in courts of law and sciences in the sciences. What does planning have to say about this? Well, in fact, he points out a lot of scientists do believe in God. Now that's an empirical fact. There are a number of scientists who believe in God. So are they assuming God does not exist or that naturalism is true when they're doing their science experiments? And planning notes, no, a lot of physicists, I guess he could have added biologists and so forth. And I've heard theistic scientists say this, which is when they're doing their science, they're exploring how they think God designed the universe. So when they're exploring the origins of the universe or even biological creatures, they have in mind how God designed things. In fact, this is true historically. Like even when Newton was first, the great scientist Newton, when he was finding the laws of nature and giving us Newton's laws, he took himself to be exploring how God created the universe. So, all right. So that's a good point. Planning good for us to be reminded of that. But again, you still wonder maybe there's still something going on here. Like in Dennett's story, I mean, when you're doing when you're investigating something in law, or when you're investigating or doing work in science, or even history, you're never gonna say, "Well, maybe God did this." That seems to be a little bit out of the sciences. Um, so maybe naturalism is assumed. Uh, maybe now. Oh, one last point on this video is if you remember what Rhoda said, um, maybe then that just means the sciences are limited. Um, but if you guys remember Rhoda's point that, and that might be why a lot of the, with regard to the fine tuning argument, a lot of scientists aren't jumping to believing in a fine tuner, they're believing in many universes. Um, that might be so, but is there anything in the science itself that's ruling out, that's like as a part of the science, is ruling out that God exists? Uh, that's something to be thought about, and the Dennett and Planning are going to go back and forth on this a little bit more. So we'll talk about that more later. All right,